Good morning and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this very, very important segment today, the 19th day of December 2022. And it is 22 degrees and mostly sunny right here in Brisbane. Hey, the world is waking up to this big news. Argentina wins the World Cup on penalties over France as Messi collects the trophy. Well, it is a huge, huge news that's breaking out. Lionel Messi has led Argentina to World Cup glory after the most thrilling final in the 92-year-old history of the tournament. Argentina took lead through Messi and Angel Di Maria, only by Kylian Mbappe to score a late brace. Messi restored Argentina's lead in extra time, but Mbappe again hit back for France, completing his hat-trick and taking the game to a penalty shootout. Argentina won the shootout 4-2 to claim the World Cup and the victory in one of the sport's all-time great games. So there you are, up to date. And of course, we know that the fans are still celebrating at the Trafalgar Square in London. That was at about 11 p.m. and the party had just begun. And French President Emmanuel Macron has congratulated both sides on the performance in the final, Argentina on their win. We are all very sad, very disappointed, Macron told the reporters in Qatar. As per Reuters, he also praised Mbappe's extraordinary performance, adding bravo to Argentina, to the Argentina players and the people. Macron said that French squad will return to the country on Monday and parade down the Champs-Élysées in Paris, despite their defeat. So that's the spirit. So just looking at the game in the glance, Argentina had 20 shots, while as France had 10, and Argentina had 20 shots on the target with 5 from France. Chances created, Argentina created 15, while France had 6. So there you are, ladies and gentlemen, up to date on Australian Indian Radio, and congratulations to Argentina, which would of course be in a very, very celebratory mode at this point in time. You can just imagine all the carnivals that would be taking place. Well, right now, not such great news. Emotional tribute at the Geba for the police officers. Here's that news.
A distraught police commissioner standing side by side with her officers to honour those taken.
These members stand together today to pay tribute to their colleagues and the community they serve.
Cricket fans and players break into spontaneous applause before a minute's silence to remember 2 fallen officers, coming together to console and be consoled.
So we pray a blessing tonight upon the grief that is in all of us.
Last night in Chinchilla, candles, prayers and flowers brought light to a dark week. The brightest light among them, Constable Keely Brough, who came to remember the victims of a tragedy that nearly claimed her life.
And I just think that's a wonderful show of strength on her part, but also her love for our community as well.
She was one of 4 officers ambushed by Gareth, Nathaniel and Stacey Train during a missing persons check at a remote property at Weambilla. Constables Matthew Arnold and Rachel McCrow were killed, alongside a neighbour, Alan Dare.
We remember these heroes. We also think of their families and friends who must be suffering immense grief.
As local officers departed, the community formed a guard of honour. And today in nearby Tara, where Constables McCrow and Arnold served, many of the same people gathered again. The outpouring of emotional and financial support for the colleagues and families of the victims has been staggering. Locals have already raised more than $75,000 for the Dare family, and the vigils held over the past 24 hours have kept a focus on the victims' legacies, rather than the attack that claimed their lives. Toby Chers-Lewis, ABC News, Tara.
And it is such a good thing to see the community come together in times of distress like that. And this is what Australians are all about. Well, right now, cryptocurrency, when we look at the fall and will these kind of things come about, there are growing calls for more regulations.
Well, obviously this is going to be a very difficult case simply because of the number of creditors that are owed money, as well as the lack of bookkeeping, as you've mentioned. So there are some positive signs at this stage, but it will be definitely a long process. There was word that there could be potentially at least $1 billion which has been secured at this point, and there is some positive signs that more assets will be identified and secured by the current CEO.
Yeah, and Dan, we've seen a lot of cryptocurrency firms and digital currencies collapse this year. For example, Terra, Luna, Celsius, now FTX. So how worried should investors be about potentially being scammed or losing money if they're thinking of putting money into cryptocurrency projects?
Well, cryptocurrency by nature is quite a risky investment. Anyone who is potentially looking to get into cryptocurrency to expand their portfolio due to the lower interest rates in the banks, etc., they really need to take note of the risk. And that is part of the reason why there are the large gains to be made, but also the massive losses that can be made. So it's interesting that FTX is not necessarily the largest fall for a cryptocurrency exchange or currency this year. So we've also seen the Terra collapse, which caused a massive fallout across most of the blockchains. But there was also Celsius, which was also a huge loss, which was greater than what we will likely expect from FTX. In terms of the ongoing market, no doubt investors are quite cautious at this stage, and I can completely appreciate that from our side. But in terms of cryptocurrencies, they've been quite resilient over the years, and no doubt we'll see a recovery at some stage, but no doubt there will be a lot of caution by investors from this point.
And Dan, I want to ask you...
There will be lots of cautions, and call me old-fashioned if you may, but for me, give me real money anytime. These imaginary and digital currencies still just doesn't do it, not for me. Well, right now, the hopes fade for the sake of the death toll rises in the Malaysian landslide.
This is all that's left of the campsite after the earth gave way. Rescue teams armed with excavators scour the thick mud in a desperate search for the missing. But the sheer weight of the earth is crushing hopes of finding them alive.
Honestly, the chances of survival are quite small. The condition of the land is comparable to bread soaked in water.
More than 90 people were sleeping in their tents on this farm when the hillside gave way.
Our neighbour woke us up because their house was shaking and they saw the water. Earth had already fallen towards the farmhouse. We all ran uphill.
Enough soil and debris to fill 180 Olympic-sized swimming pools fell 30 metres from the road above.
Not long after that, maybe just 2 minutes after we ran, we heard the earth falling loudly and all our houses were destroyed.
So our thoughts are there with the people and when natural disaster strikes. Well, right now, going to Peru, where it's like a fever dream where Aussies are stranded and they are calling for help.
We're just really happy to be back in Cusco, back in somewhere where we can actually get out of and we're not stuck anymore.
And what has DFAT told you?
I actually haven't contacted the embassy or anything. I've just been in contact with my university and my insurance, and they've been really helpful with getting me out of the Aguas Calientes area and back into Cusco and on a flight tomorrow.
So how did you guys get out of Machu Picchu? What was that like?
Well, I took the train yesterday afternoon, and that took us to about kilometre 88 before there was a massive boulder on the tracks. So we had to get out at night and walk along the tracks with our luggage and everything and walk a couple of kilometres to the next town. Then we had to get a private transport to Cusco, which took about another couple of hours.
We've been told that there are violent protests. Have you seen anything? What was the feeling there when you were leaving?
When I was leaving, it was really, it was like a fever dream. Like you don't think this is going to happen to you until it does. And all the locals were really happy that we were leaving, that we could get out. There was riot guards at the train station with their AK-47s and all their riot gear escorting us. And we had police escorts on the way to Cusco as well.
Chloe,
well done, and in making it that far, so you can look at those conditions there. They are treacherous conditions. Well, right now let's go to Lismore, where the doctors warn that lives are at risk because of lack of funding and assistance.
Lismore dermatologist Ken Goodmanson lost his 10-room clinic in the floods 9 months ago. Since then, he's been begging for help.
We're absolutely despairing because we've tried for so long. We have a little bit of hope, but then it gets dashed because they announce new things, but it never includes us.
He's struggling to continue his practice like dozens of others.
We're talking about the local GPs, we're talking about local specialists and pharmacists. They've not been specifically supported with enough money to go on and provide a good service.
A little bit towards me now.
Lismore GP Nina Robertson lost $2 million worth of property and equipment and now works out of a tiny pathology clinic.
We're certainly observed in our clinic when we've been able to get back up and running and start seeing our patients that we've had delayed cancer diagnoses, for example.
Patients are increasingly heading to the emergency department. A record number were admitted in the last quarter, up 12% on the same time last year.
There are more than 1,500 overdue surgeries in the northern New South Wales area, and that is longer than almost every other local health district in the state.
New South Wales Regional Health Minister Bronnie Taylor says investment in primary health is the responsibility of the federal government. She says she wrote to her Canberra counterparts in September, encouraging them to support the proposal to create a Northern Rivers healthcare business grant.
So there you go. There's always that the debate between the federal and the state as to whose responsibility it is, and I personally feel that it should be a very clear-cut sense when it comes to the health of our people. Well, right now moving on to Northern Territory, where the Parliament is in a shock over the sudden death of a politician.
A tragic day in the corridors of Parliament and the close-knit communities of the Tiwi Islands alike, both mourning a colleague, a leader and a friend who rose to the formidable challenge of representing thousands of disadvantaged Australians in one of the Territory's sprawling bush seats. His election in a 2016 Labor landslide was only the latest chapter in a lifetime spent improving the lot of his people, especially those from the Tiwi Islands he called home. He spent decades working to improve conditions in remote communities, including through ATSIC and local governments. His sudden death in his early 50s yesterday has prompted an outpouring of grief from across the political spectrum. The Chief Minister released a tribute, saying he was the member for Arafura, but more than that, he was a husband, a father, a grandfather, a leader in the community and a friend to many. He was our friend. We're shocked and saddened and will miss him greatly. The opposition leader offered...
Very shocking news there coming out of Northern Territory as well. Well, right now let's go over to Northern Territory, where one woman has a mission, and the mission is to spread the Christmas cheer. Good on her.
Santa's sleigh might look a little different in the remote NT, but it's still delivering Christmas cheer, as one woman does everything she can to bring joy to aged care residents from Darwin to Alice Springs and everywhere in between.
It's an easy way to give something back to people that have given so much to our community who may now find themselves, isolated without family at Christmas.
Tori Starr began hand-delivering gifts to seniors in Darwin and Palmerston in 2016, but she quickly saw the difference it made and the operation scaled up from there.
So after the first year, I actually said I was never going to do it again. I was exhausted by Christmas Eve and I got to the last home right on dark. And delivered the presents, and they actually said that was the only presents they were getting this year. So then I went, well, I need to do this again next year.
The one-woman show has now swelled into a massive 6-month effort, covering thousands of kilometres and bringing together teams of volunteers and hundreds of donations, before freight and charter companies deliver the gifts into the open arms of recipients.
For the last couple of months, there is nothing else other than work, sleep and Secret Santa.
The presents being packaged up here will battle corrugated roads and wet season storms and be delivered to remote communities in some of the most far reaches of the Northern Territory. And it's all part of this huge effort to bring a bit of joy into the lives of senior Territorians.
And well done. What a great move there. It is such a wonderful gesture. Well, ladies and gentlemen, right now let's move on where parties negotiate to form coalition where no clear winner is in Fiji.
The results from Fiji's national election have been finalised, but no political party has won an outright majority. Frank Bainimarama's incumbent ruling party Fiji first gained 42.5%, while a coalition between Sitiveni Rambuka's People's Alliance Party and the National Federation Party won a combined 44.7%. Both sides are now negotiating with the Social Democratic Liberal Party, SEDELPA, to form a coalition. ABC reporter Marion Farr has more from Suva.
Well, there's a lot up in the air at the moment. Political parties are deep in negotiations as they try to scramble together coalitions that will allow them to form government. Now, this is after results came through this morning that show no clear winner. Both major parties will need the help of the Social Democratic Liberal Party or SEDELPA in order to form government. And so that's where things are at the moment. Both these sides are trying to win over that allegiance.
So, Marion, are we anticipating that things will, move swiftly and smoothly now, given that we have had in the past 24 hours or so some, calls of concern being aired around the way that the vote tally has been conducted and things like that? Do we anticipate now that the focus will be on those negotiations and forming, a coalition to form government there?
Indeed, that does seem to be the focus at the moment, and we've just come from the Social Democratic Liberal Party headquarters where we were able to speak briefly with the General Secretary. Now, he says that last night negotiations with both major parties began and they've now entered a second round of negotiations. He wouldn't give much away in terms of which way the party was leaning, but obviously SEDELPA sits in a very powerful position at the moment and they're just trying to see what they're able to get out of this situation.
Non-negotiables are mostly our priority policies on indigenous affairs, the topic affairs, education, and there are other issues that the committee is working on at this very moment.
Do you think it's hypocritical to have the slogan "It's time for change" and then be negotiating with Bainimarama?
It's not hypocritical if you are going to bring the change back to Bainimarama.
Are you leaning towards either side at this stage?
Right now we're sitting in the middle, we're watching and waiting for what is on offer. Then we'll make the decision based on what's best for the nation.
Now, interestingly, the General Secretary says that neither leader of the major parties has engaged directly in negotiations with SEDELPA. That's something that they would like to see. They want to see Frank Bainimarama and Sitiveni Rambuka coming and having face-to-face discussions. Whether that will happen, we don't know, but it's safe to say the next few hours are crucial for Fiji. SEDELPA says they're expecting to make a decision by the end of today.
Well, we hope that some good resolution does come out of those negotiations. Well, negotiations, we are in a great strait where we have shortage of potatoes.
Golden, crunchy, deep-fried potato pieces. Christmas lunch at the pub wouldn't be complete without a bowl or two.
We're talking, a small pub still going through 20, 30 boxes of chips in a week. You add that up across the network, across the country, it's an enormous part of our business.
But a looming shortage is making it hard for commercial kitchens to get their hands on frozen chips.
Last week it was a bit of a struggle getting half what we ordered.
Sydney chef Sam Bull is taking what he can get at double the usual wholesale price.
This week we've changed 3 varieties of chips. We had shoestrings, short little stubby ones, fat ones, and we just, as they come in, we're using them.
Especially over the festive season, the spike in demand is colliding with the fallout of a very wet year. Farmers who'd typically be harvesting now have only just planted.
We only finished planting about a week ago. That should have been finished a month ago.
we'd be 5-6 weeks behind.
Supermarkets have taken steps to prevent all too familiar panic buying. Coles has introduced a limit of 2 bags of frozen chips per shopper. Sam says spuds may not be on his menu much longer.
The next 2 weeks will be pretty difficult, and it'll come to a point where it might just run out.
The good news is the potato shortage isn't likely to last. Once New Year's celebrations are done, demand will go down, supply will go up, and our hot chips should be easier to source. Ruby Cornish, ABC News, Sydney.
Get stuck into the chips, ain't? Well, it ain't a pub dinner without the chips, as they reckon. Well, right now, there are prices of Christmas favourites have a sharp increase.
Sadly, the cost of more and more Australian Christmas favourites are on the rise.
Salmon and ocean trout, that's going up by 30%. Prices are at least double what they were, say, a year or two ago.
Crisis is definitely the right word to be using.
A kilo of apricots is 63% higher than 12 months ago, watermelon 56% and cherries 30% more.
50 cents change. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
A whole uncooked chicken is 35% pricier, pork roast up 15% and raw peeled prawns 13% more than last Christmas.
The latest CPI estimate said that they've gone up 9% across the board, but we still keep seeing our fresh produce being most affected.
And basics for a pudding or pavlova are up. Free-range eggs 15%, milk 12%. The federal government has an inquiry into food security, sustainability and prices, and it's taking submissions now. But the Institute for Health Transformation, which monitors prices, says plenty can be done before that's complete, including reassessing food subsidies and lower income support.
1 in 6 Australians are also food insecure. Most Australians don't eat enough fruit and veg. It's less than 10% of the population that already meet the guidelines.
It's also tough for small business absorbing costs to stay competitive. But those at Melbourne's Queen Victoria Market says some things are also cheaper.
Mangoes are really, really cheap at the moment, okay, in abundance at the moment. You are tomato, look, even potatoes, etc., your pumpkins, your carrots, all the staples are still quite good.
And their advice, be flexible, even on Christmas Day.
Australians have an enormous cooked prawn.
Well, but be reasonable and be fair, and of course, get what you need and what's in supply. So this is the good old saying of the economics of supply and demand. Well, right now, let's go to this news. A violent pitch invasion leaves players and officials injured in Melbourne. There is no room for that kind of behaviour.
Of shame for Australian sport. The pitch invasion that has horrified soccer fans around the world seemed to exhilarate a section of the Melbourne grandstand. It all started with fans protesting against the league awarding the grand final to Sydney for the next 3 years. Instead of a promised walkout, flares were thrown onto the pitch at both ends. And when City goalkeeper Tom Glover tossed a flare back, a mob stormed the field.
The referee has called for both sets of players to leave the field of play.
Glover suffered severe lacerations and a concussion from a metal bin full of sand.
We have detectives from North West Metro Regional Crime Squad investigating. They are working very hard to identify those involved, and they will continue to do so. And I expect that we will be knocking on doors very soon. We will be looking to prosecute where we can.
Referee Alex King avoided injury.
And as I mentioned before, there is no room in Australian sports for that kind of behaviour. Well, ladies and gentlemen, right now, as we don't have the daily India report, I'd like to feature the Islamic Women's Association of Australia and the DV awareness video by the community leaders. Well done, and they've done a wonderful job with this.
It starts with respect, it starts with me. On average, 1 woman a week is killed at the hands of a former or current intimate partner.
Children are also under-recognized victims of this crisis. We all have a responsibility to speak up against violence.
We will not accept notions of inequality that are at the core of this crisis. We will not tolerate or participate in the subjugation of women.
We will not allow sexist jokes to continue. We will challenge attitudes and beliefs that suggest women are inferior or are possessions.
We will not condone the abuse of women and children. As men, we promise to make the world a safer place.
Nearly 1 in 3 migrant and refugee women in Australia have experienced some form of domestic and family violence.
Domestic or family violence is the greatest health risk factor for women aged 25 to 44.
Both men and women are 3 times more likely to be assaulted by a man. Let's not pretend that this is not a gendered issue.
As a man, we stand before you and say,
together, we will work with you to create a positive change.
Together, we will promote healthy relationships.
Together, we will call out toxic behaviour.
Together, we will challenge discriminatory language.
Together, we will raise boys and men to respect and value women as equals.
Together, we will make the world a safer place for all.
Together, we say no to violence.
I say no to violence.
Tôi chống bạo hành.
Stop kekerasan terhadap wanita dan anak-anak dalam keluarga.
নারী এবং শিশুদের প্রতি নির্যাতন বন্ধ করুন.
ខ្ញុំថាអត់ទេចំពោះអំពើអង្សាយ Nikasema hapana kwa vurugu.
ሽደተ ሃይር
ንዝኾነ ዓመፅን በደልን ኣብ ልዕሊ ካልኦት ኣይፋል ንበል
हम हिंसा के लिए ना कहते हैं.
मैं तशद्दुद के खिलाफ हूँ.
نحن نقول لا للعنف.
Я кажем не насилию.
Haure kabingure vijabata face face.
We say no to violence. I say yes to respect, equality and compassion.
Well done, the Islamic Women's Association of Australia, and a very well produced and a very well edited and put together video with a very sound message. This is the message of the time. As I mentioned before, we're looking at that behavior in Melbourne that is just not on. So, you know, this video here, even though it is on domestic violence and equality for women, showing respect for women, and it is what we need to do. And more people, more community leaders need to come together, get together to spread that message of goodness within the community. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's about all we have time for you today, and it's been wonderful having your company as usual. Don't forget that we'll be back tomorrow at 9 a.m. Until then, it's goodbye from me. Remain safe. It is the festive season, but be very mindful.